Hi everyone, and welcome back to our eighth episode of Through the King, our podcast where we analyze the energy of famous people through the Tzolkin. And we have one really interesting today, and we are here with Carol. Hi Carol, how are you?
Hi, Karen. Yeah, looking forward today. Thank you to
Um,
the people who voted because it was a very good choice.
Of course. So this one was the most with the most votes on Instagram, and you can choose between Dolly Parton, Chris Cornell, Paul Gauguin, and Malcolm X, that are characters from the Moonwave spell. And the one for the Windwave spell we have already chosen. So we are going to reveal who it is, but on the next episodes. So please stay on this episode because we are talking about tan tan tan.
Al Pacino, Alfredo
Okay,
James Pacino, I think.
okay, yeah. Well, he's
Uses
better
that.
known as Al Pacino, and he born on New York on the Bronx on 25th April 1940, and he's from this wave spell, and his skin is 207 blue crystal hand. So what can we say about hand like as a glyph? That is an energy that works with knowledge and also healing, and it transform, put into action your abilities, your inner tools, to build in this case build characters, build roles, uh, and well, he's in the crystal tone that talks about as a social role or a communitary role with cooperation in helping. So we have been investigating, exploring his life and his roles, of course, in his famous movies, and we were find out a lot of curious things. So, uh, from which could we start?
Well, I wonder if in general we could talk about his acting and how that, like generally talking about it, and how that his way of acting, his method acting, which um, re- involved him really exploring the character he was going to play and getting to know the character and then sort of becoming that character, which is so that was method acting. So it was quite new, really, in those at that time. I think Marlon Brando was the only really person that I heard him mention who was doing that kind of acting before. Maybe James Dean in the cinema
Yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah,
Yeah. So he had this, I mean, amazing when you, right from the start, because he started off in the theatre. He
yes,
wasn't even thinking about the cinema. He started off doing plays in the bars, I think, and he'd been, it was one of his teachers at school who'd sort of really triggered him to pursue this, because she went to see his grandma when he was only about 9 or something and said, oh, encourage him to do acting. So it started with the theatre, and interestingly enough, um, it was in when he first got his first role, it was in a play called The Indian Wants the Bronx, and that was
yeah,
in 1968. And he did 177 shows, and he won an
wow,
Obie Award for the Best Actor. So he was only 28, and he won
yes,
that. But in the theatre, that was the Magnetic Hand Solar Ring. That was his Red
yeah,
Castle. So you're looking at the initiation of his acting career, you know, so it
Yeah.
all seems to add up really, you know, it all seems to and then he won another award the following year, um April 1969, and I believe that was Planetary Hand.
Wow.
So, but yeah, so
So
that's
interesting. For example, for the first example that you said, um, the hand wave spell in
yeah,
this magnetic hand, it's like his
yeah,
personality wave spell or purpose. So because the hand is like a purpose in that moment, so it's like in some way uh, the events on his life are showing how he is going to develop his ability as a hand. And
yeah.
the other one was in planetary hand, like you said, so it's the manifestation of these abilities. So
Yeah, I mean, the date of it was Planetary Hand, and it was still in the magnetic hand solar ring, so kind of
okay,
double hands there. Yeah,
yeah, of course.
yeah.
Well, we can say
So
that when it's available, your own belief, and this is for everybody, it's an interesting moment because you can experiment or recognize your abilities and the things that you need to learn because always your own belief is the things that you need to develop. So, in his case, interesting things happen in that specific energies.
it was during that time that his manager, Martin Bregman, becomes his manager because he sees him in this role of the Indian wants the Bronx. And so suddenly it's going to have things, you know, he starts becoming well known and respected straight away.
Yeah,
And it's really not long after that that he's in movies. So he does start off um, the movies in 1969. He in one
yeah,
of them he's playing actually like a heroin addict,
yeah,
and when they finished filming that, he I think he won an award for it, but he didn't go to pick it up because he was still kind of hanging around with the people in Needle Park, which is the heroin
yeah,
addicts, because and I think he just had this great empathy with people and humanity, and that's what he would have brought to this role. You know, you've got the people in one of the worst situations in New York, and he's representing them as he does throughout his acting career. He represents like the good, the bad, and the ugly, you might say, of you know roles, and but just brings this humanity into them. You know, like because
yeah,
inside that drug addict, inside that mafioso, you know, there is at the center a seed of a human being somewhere, and he
yeah,
manages to find that. And you know, he doesn't he never, it's not about glorifying, and it's not about excusing any of the whatever behavior, but it's kind of like showing us that the human is
yes,
in, you know,
yes,
human
of
condition
course,
really.
yeah.
Yeah,
And if we see his oracle, the human is his analog energy, and in this case, and also I was thinking something I read about his first interpretation because, like you said, it's really hard to interpret some specific conditions or things, situations that maybe you don't pass. But well, he's an actor, but he born with this ability, and for some of his iconic characters that we are going to talk about, of course, he inspires on, for example, his heritage,
yeah. Hmm.
because, for example, he has Italian blood, so he has a lot of information, and he takes these human conditions to interpret his characters or his roles. And it's really interesting because, well, he has this kind of nutrition of the human condition to show in his characters, and I think that that is a great key for his success in his interpretations. That I think that is one of the keys that makes him really memorable, and everyone's love his characters because he's real when he
Yeah.
interprets.
So the next 1972, well, I think this is the release date actually. So he's probably starts filming really, just goes straight from the theatre into this role that Francis Ford Coppola wants him to play in this
Yeah,
amazing movie that he's um, about to film, The Godfather,
yeah,
which is one of the most famous and favorite movies of all time.
yeah,
Um, and amazingly, it's one of these films that when you watch it, it could have been made yesterday. You know, when you watch some films that are made even in 1980s and you think, my God, that looks so old. Like I can't even, or there's other
yeah,
films and you think, okay, it's actually a good storyline. Maybe we need to update it and you bring it into, and then we can bring it into 2026. So it's like, you
yeah.
don't need to do that with The Godfather and some of his other movies as well. It is like, somehow they literally have captured something that,
Yeah, the
yeah,
essence,
the
the
essence,
es-
yeah, yeah,
the essence of
and
the, yeah, of the script, maybe.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
can,
I just thought two things that will bring together um, about the Godfather, because years later, and it was years later, I think it was only a few years ago, Francis Ford Coppola was awarded his AFI Lifetime Achievement Award, so the American
yeah,
Film Institution, I think that is. And he said about Pacino on that occasion, there's two factors that make actors very good. One is extreme intelligence, and the other is a natural God-given talent, and Pacino has both.
wow,
So there you have at the one end, we have like the warrior wave spell with the intelligence,
yeah,
and on the other hand,
yeah,
you have this God-given talent, which is really the hand, because we know the hand is the God-given, almost
yeah.
channeled knowledge.
And it's funny because sometimes in this glyph, or I mean, it's not general, but in this case, in this glyph that talks about healing, sometimes when we talk about the shadows of the of this glyph, sometimes people that uh, works the hand as their glyph suffer from diseases or some complicated things, and after the success of the Godfather, he suffered a lot the fame. I mean, he
Yeah.
was the fame overwhelmed him. So
Yeah, yeah.
he confessed that after this movie that was really success for him, and he
Mm.
passed to be really unknown to be a world famous actor. He started to take therapy 5 days during 25 years. So, and
Right.
he was yeah, overwhelmed by the fame. So uh, well, he knew how make this balance between fame and his private life. And well, this is one of the things that fame brings also. But well, he knew how to handle this aspect in his life. And well, there's a lot of things to say about the Godfather because it brings him fame, also love, also um, in a at first also the producers didn't want him as the principal actor because they didn't like that he was really shy, and he's still being shy, but he also used his abilities to to handle this this way to to be, and well, tries um, to socialize more, well, because also it's his essence. But if we have to talk about the Godfather, let's open our Easter eggs. Let's open our surprises to
Okay,
that
okay,
we
we've got an
found.
Easter egg. We got this as the big one, isn't it?
Yeah,
We always when we're searching someone, you never know where you're going to find the Easter egg, this little hidden nugget of surprise, and so
yeah,
this was really great, wasn't it? Karen found the first one.
yeah. Well, when we started to search the characters for this wave spell, and you to vote, um, well, we have a big list, and well, you choose Al Pacino's, and when we start to investigate his story, I find out that he has some comments on his biography of Diane Keaton, that is the same king him. I mean, she's a crystal hand, and I find out I didn't know that they were couple. They started a relationship in the on the filming set of the Godfather, and they were between around 20 years together. So it's amazing because they work the same purpose and the same king. And well, we found out some examples that they really love each other until now. So it's amazing. And well, she described him as a good person, and well, they are not together because they wanted different things, but um, I think that
It's an eternal
they
love. They have like an
yeah,
eternal love for each
yeah,
other.
they
Very
finished
special.
the relationship by different things. One of those things are that she wanted to get married, and he don't. And well,
And he never
she
did. He never married
yeah,
anybody. So
he never. Okay, so a couple of years ago, she was recognized by the AFI, and he gave the speech, and he said a lot of things of her. I mean, they weren't a couple in that moment, a long time ago. And he resumed his speech saying, I love you forever, right?
yeah.
That was in 2017. And well, the AFI, the American Film Institute, gave her a career award,
Lifetime award. Yeah,
lifetime
lifetime.
award. Yeah. So that talks about how he feels about her, and well, she always talked really well about him. Uh, she she gave a lovely reference about
Well,
how it
all of his partners, his girlfriends, they all spoke. Well, they all had good relationships with him. Still have got actually. They
yeah,
all just spoke so well of him. I've not heard a bad thing. I mean, obviously, he just wasn't the sort of person who was going to settle down, but he certainly likes family, and he's still producing. Up to 3 years ago, his last child was born, and
yeah,
with some people, you think, oh God, it's a bit like 84 or whatever, it's a bit, or 82, whatever he was at the time. But there's something about Al Pacino that's a bit special, isn't there? And
yeah,
you sort of it depends. It's not how you. It's not what you do. It's the way that you do it. You know, it's
Yeah.
not. It's not always the same. You know. So, and also, I just thought it was quite a funny little anecdote was that one of his well-known girlfriends was Beverly D'Angelo, who was also an actress, and when they met in 2023, she was still married to an Italian duke called Lorenzo Salviati. But it's kind of like, I think this says it all about Al Pacino, is that they they had an amicable divorce so that she could be with Pacino, that she didn't marry him. And she later recalled that the Duke said to her, when she told him, he's like, Al Pacino, he's fantastic. Oh, I love him. We divorce.
Oh,
You
oh,
know,
that's
it's just,
funny. Yeah.
it's, but I mean, that's it. That's what everybody, I think, how they feel. It's,
Yeah. Let's open up
yeah.
another Easter egg because we have more about Diane
Oh, yeah.
Keaton
This,
and The
this, this.
Godfather, and of course Al
Yeah. Should we give
Pacino.
this at the next Easter egg
Yeah.
for the Godfather? This is pretty amazing because when I was looking up about the movies, and I saw that Michael Corleone, the character, the fictional character that um, uh, Pacino portrays, he actually has got a birth date, you know, an identifiable birth date. So that is the 23rd of March 1920, which gives him a kin of spectral wizard in the seed wave spell. And then I'd worked out the combined energy the day before for Al Pacino and Diane Keaton, and it was spectral wizard in the same weave spell. It's the same. Their
Oh,
combined energy is the same
wow.
as Don Corleone. It's just like,
Yeah. And they
yeah,
work together in that movie,
in
especially
that
in that
movie.
movie. These
Yeah,
are
there
the
you
kind
go.
of things that show us the synchronicity between our life and the
And the
energies that
Tzolkin.
are. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
And if we think about this movie, like you said, that
yeah.
is timeless. It's
Which
like
is
the
the
wizard.
it's the
It's
wizard. Yeah,
what the wizard show us. So
yeah.
and everyone knows about the Godfather, and everyone uh, saw that movie and knows Al Pacino about that character. So
It's like you were
yeah,
literally being having this view on this world. I think it
yeah,
was
yeah, and think
somehow
about the transcendence of this wave spell. That is the star, the cosmic star, that is that energy that connect us with the art and our abilities and give and what it
right.
makes us shine. And well, I think he's a great represent of this wave
Yeah.
spell.
Later on in um, amongst the other characters that Pacino would play, because he played different mafioso characters,
Yeah,
different police and law enforcement characters, and also lawyers, and then others as well, relation things more romantic and this, that, and the other. But it's as if he was. He was showing us from all these different angles, these different kinds that not everybody is the same. You can't just fit them put a label on them. You know, there's a lot
yeah,
more going on, and so he was kind of unpacking that in his as he went through. And the Don Brasco and was released in 1997. I would say it is my favorite movie. And it was released on Solar Human in the Seed Wave spell, which is Pacino's integrated energy. And I just think, and
wow,
it is amazing because this is based on a real story, absolutely real story, not, and Donnie Brasco was a real cop who had to really do what Al Pacino and Johnny Depp were doing in the movie. He had to
yeah,
learn to play the part, pretend that he was to join the mafia. So he pretended he was a jewel thief, and he was in there for at least, I think, 3 years. And that's a really dangerous situation to be in. And also, you're getting very involved with the people. You know, you've got real bonds to them, and so it's really like art imitating life, imitating,
Yeah.
and that was his integrated energy, and it was.
You talk about Johnny Depp, and do you know that he is a lunar hand? He also
Oh,
is hand, and they share the same guide on the oracle because Al Pacino has
oh,
the
the storm,
storm as the guide, and
right,
also Johnny Depp has the same
storm,
oracle with the glyphs.
right,
So they share this movie together, and they work
right.
the same glyph, at least the glyph.
Yeah, and they're very similar in how they work, and also this storm, like they're continually reinventing themselves.
Yeah, and he
So
enjoys a lot the theater, for example.
yeah,
And well, he says that, like I said in the backstage, he say that cinema or films are to pay the bills, and theater it's for breathing, to express his artist, to feel free with his artist. So he enjoys a lot of playing
oh
theater.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not so
Well,
crazy, yeah, as that one. So
yeah,
anyway, the other thing was at the age of 52, which we often find, don't we, that
yeah,
things age
yeah.
of
That
52, yeah.
that is also one of these synchronicities or Easter eggs, like we said, because he was a lot of time was nominated to the Oscars, but he finally uh, achieved that prize in a special moment in his life. So that was when he was in his 52, right? When
Born,
you're
yeah.
born, all these energies are in the universe, like in the astrology show us, and we have all these kings around us. We took our one king in our moment that we born, and we born in a wave spell, in a specific year, and all this energy repeats only when we uh, birth 52 years. That is the complete repetition of these energies. So he achieved this prize, win this prize, when he had uh, birth these
When he was
52
born,
years.
when he was on his, yeah, 52 years birthday. Yeah.
Exactly.
And
So it's amazing because he was nominated a lot of times, but and he was nominated by great movies.
yeah, yeah. In this, when he's playing a blind man, which he did amazingly well and beautifully, with the iconic tango scene.
Yeah,
If you haven't seen it, but I think if anybody's watching this, if you know Al Pacino, most people have seen that. So it's
yeah,
amazing, beautiful acting, just so
yeah,
stunning. Actually, that was released on Resonant Moon Night Wave Spell, which was the same kin as his first play, his first theatre play, The Indian
yeah,
Wants the Bronx. That was
yeah.
in the red. That was back in the Red Castle. That was his first that theatre production, professional on
Yes,
the stage, so in a theatre, rather than in a bar. And now we come here, which is the Yellow Castle, which is the castle of maturity. He's
yeah,
and he's 52 years, so it's almost like you've completed one cycle. He may even live to 100. I don't know if he'll live to 104, but we'll see if he finishes gets to another cycle. But yeah.
yeah. And
um
there's this synchronicity again, like you said, it was the same king as his first play. That was when he received his first award. We have the Oscar as this big recognized award for the actors and for the movies. And well, I think it's the one that everyone wants to win. And well, in his case, was when he was on his 52. That is really significance for
Yeah.
people, because it's like a reborn, an energetic
Rebirth.
reborn.
Yeah,
So
rebirth.
rebirth. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean,
So
he's had like a child 3 years ago who actually that child has, their kin is the kin for this year that we're almost, well, we've only got a little bit left of really. The resonant seed mirror wave spell, that's Roman Pacino. And he's
yeah,
also got a movie out at the moment, Al Pacino, which was just released 20 day on the 9th of June. On the cosmic wind of the dog wave spell was this one
okay,
about called Killing Castro, which I'm really looking for. I want to see that. The Castro went to New York. So again, we've got this is Al Pacino's territory, and he's playing
yeah,
a character in New York.
yeah,
Um, so and yeah, and he released a biography, autobiography,
yeah,
in a couple of years ago. So, um, he's still with us. I mean, this guy he's got staying power. So he's got planetary serpent. Because I'm just thinking that
yeah,
I think part of this his survival mechanism. Well, what is it? What's the
yeah.
secret here? You know?
Well, I was watching between you were saying about this integrated energy. Um, like you said, his Sychrono, the planetary serpent, it's
Oh yeah,
also
he's got
in
serpent
his it's also in
in the
his
same
wave
way.
spell, in this
Oh
wave
yeah.
spell, in the warrior wave spell. And it's interesting because if we talk about the serpent, we are talking about this power of adapting to the things.
Right.
So
Yes.
maybe he also is uh, um, showing this change of skins in his characters and his power
Mm.
of course, of survive uh, to the things that life put us in front of us. I mean, and also I want to add it that I was watching the energy that he took this year, that is resonant earth, yeah, resonant earth
Okay.
on the monkey wave spell. And if we look at the oracle for this resonant earth,
Right.
um, the perfect analog, it's the 2 days energy, the resonant wind.
Oh,
So
right.
we choose
Wow.
to
We've
record
chosen the right day.
this episode today,
Yeah.
in his perfect analog for this year. So,
Mm.
and also it's the high energy or the occult energy for the year, that is resonance seed, is the perfect
Okay.
occult, that is Roman Pacino,
Yeah.
his younger his youngest child,
Yeah.
energy. So
Right.
we are
Yeah.
on the channel.
And just like my sort of, I think, final
Yeah,
comment I'd like to say is about resonant wind, because I think that is an amazing that he has the wind is resonant in his
yeah,
wave spell, because to me that is him, the Shakespearean actor from the Bronx with Sicilian roots, and interpreting
yeah,
all the characters from that area that he lives in. But it's, yeah, I think that that process that he brings to it, to acting,
yeah,
it's really through that. He gets a very balanced interpretation that he shares of these characters. So yeah, it all seems to all fits. It all
yeah,
fits.
of course, like always, because when we are talking about the perfect plan and that everything is synchronized, and we can see it on the energies. I mean,
Yeah.
if every one of us search in our whole story and the things that we experiment in life, I think we always going to find out this. these meanings that we are maybe analyzing, sorry, in famous people like we do in this podcast. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting what we can find in our own story, and we have the example with these famous characters. So I think
Yeah.
everyone should know their king and which energies
And
participates.
Karen is the best person to ask about it.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
And
okay. If
and she
Carol
does
says,
really brilliant courses, and she'll prepare your chart, and it's the thing to do right now. You can't
yeah,
really, I wouldn't leave it much later, really. 2026, good year
okay,
for it.
okay. That's a great publicity for the
That's true.
characters and the sessions. But well, I try to apply apply my own lunar serpent, my integrated energy, my passion in what I do
But
in my workshops.
she's also very good at football commentary. So do watch the your Karen's last video about the Argentinian football team. There's some Easter eggs
Oh,
in there.
okay.
There's a
Yeah,
really good
yeah.
Easter egg
Yeah,
in
there's
there.
a lot of
Look at the
synchronicities too with this World Cup,
football
and it's
World Cup.
yeah, it's really interesting that well, there's a lot of players that are with their own kings making history. So maybe one day we can analyze some things, or maybe we can uh, see which are the champions, and then we can analyze some of them or
Oh,
see.
afterwards.
Well, I
Let's
think it's
see.
really interesting. What can we find out about it? Well, thank you again for listening to us. And of course, let us your comments about this character, and what do you think about this analyze that we did about Al Pacino's energy. And also remember to vote in the comments or in the Instagram stories about who you want to we analyze in the next chapter. And you can choose between Dolly Parton, Chris Cornell, Paul Gauguin, and Malcolm X, that are characters from that wave spell, the moon wave spell. And well, the most voted will be in the ninth episode of Through the King. And well, um, let's meet us again in the next chapter. So thank you again for all. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.